Thank you. It's not quite 5 o'clock yet. We'll just give it a second. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order of Beaumont City Council, regular council meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. Last meeting of 2024. That sounds so final, but there's also next year. So we are in order. I will begin with the land acknowledgement, as we always do. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect, honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. Councilman Goff-Swain will join us as soon as he gets here. He is just delayed from traffic coming out of downtown. We'll begin with the agenda. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a slight change to our agenda, please. If you could put it on the screen. Council, we're moving 6.3 to 6.2. We're switching 6.2 and 6.3 around in our agenda this evening. Once it's on the screen, I'll ask a member of council to move the adoption of the agenda. You should move the adoption. Okay. I'll move that the December 10th, 2024 council agenda be adopted with the following changes. Moving item 6.3, 2025 municipal operating, utility, and capital budget up to 6.2. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process? And that carries unanimously, 6-0 in favor of the motion to adopt the amended agenda. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda, Madam Clerk, do we have any open forum guests this evening? I'm assuming we don't.
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any open forum registrations this evening.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please put the consent agenda on the screen?
And Mayor, for ease, I'm going to go ahead and read out the motions on it because it is quite large and doesn't fit on one page.
Sure, go right ahead, please. Thank you.
That council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. The 5.1, that council accept the meeting minutes of November 5th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. Item 5.2, that council accept the minutes of the November 12th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. Item 5.3, the council accept the minutes of the November 19th, 2024 special council meeting as presented. Item 5.4, that council accept the minutes of the November 27th to 29th, 2024 council budget deliberations meeting minutes. Item 6.4, Council Policy C56, Elected Officials Remuneration Policy, that the updated policy C56, my apologies. Purchasing policy, my apologies.
Okay, I know what you meant.
Elected Officials Remuneration Policy as set out in Attachment 1 of the December 10th, 2024 report be approved. 6.5, Pickleball Court Siting Options, that the December 10th, 2024 Pickleball Court Siting Options report be received for information. Item 6.6, Local Growth and Sustainability Grant Submission, that council endorse the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant application submission to fund the sanitary main twinning project. Item 6.7, Public Engagement Cost Savings and Enhancements, that the November 12th, 2024 report Public Engagement Cost Savings and Enhancements be received as information. Item 6.8, Council Meeting Cancellation. December Committee of the Whole, that the December 17th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be canceled and that administration provide the necessary advertising for advising the public of the cancellation. Bylaw 7.1, 1062-24 2025 fees and charges, that bylaw 1062-24 2025 fees and charges, a bylaw that establishes the fees and rates and charges for municipal services, be given first reading, be given second reading, considered for third reading, and that bylaw 1062-24 be given third reading. Item 11.2, the Urban Reserve Project Update, that the December 10th, 2024 report Urban Reserve Project Update be received for information, at the report remain confidential pursuant to sections 21 and 25 of the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act. Item 11.3, the recommendations for public member appointments to boards and committees, that the appointment and term as set out in the December 10th, 2024 report, recommendations for public member appointments to boards and committees be approved, and that the report remain confidential pursuant to Section 17 and 29 of the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act until the applicants are informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That has to be the longest list we've ever had, I think, in this term for consent. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. I will move the adoption of the consent agenda as presented. Discussion, members of council, any concerns or questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, thank you, council. Would you please initiate the voting procedure for the consent agenda, please? Councillor Penrod, I think your button didn't quite take on a vote. Thank you very much. That carries unanimously, council, 6-0 in favor of the consent agenda as circulated. So that brings us down to item 6.1 on our agenda, affordable housing development potential next steps. We have our presenters from administration. Let me just get your mic on here. Microphone is live.
Good evening, Mayor Daniluk and members of council. I'm Katrina Tarnowski with Long Range Planning, and I'm here with my manager, Joanna Swong. This evening, my presentation will provide council with information concerning potential next steps for an affordable housing development in Beaumont. In June of this year, I presented a report to council on what would be involved in developing multi-unit affordable housing here in Beaumont in the style of the Gates Landing development in the city of Leduc. That included an overview of our role and responsibilities, some information about the process and possible funding avenues, along with 2 case studies that were meant to illustrate what this type of development could look like based on some high-level parameters. 2 key items to highlight from that report were a cost estimate of around $12 to $15 million for the full project, and the need for the city to make a significant investment to finance the portion of the project that could not be covered by grants. Council made a motion for administration to further pursue case study 1 from this report and consult with the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation to better understand project parameters and next steps. Administration met with the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation in July. The foundation shared that easy comparisons between the Gates Landing project and a new development in Beaumont were not possible, and feasibility for their multi-unit development was supported by 2 things that are not yet established in Beaumont. Number 1 being that about half of the Gates Landing project had already been constructed in phase 1 in 2015, and the new 2023 project had reduced costs because it built off of existing servicing. And number 2 was that the project was shovel-ready before the foundation applied for federal funds. This essentially means that they had already developed site plans, a pro forma, had zoning approvals, debt financing was in place, and construction contracts were ready to go. This required an investment of about $300,000 before any outside grants were assured. The foundation's advice to administration was that for determining specific, more granular details of a development project, this could be accomplished through the preparation of a schematic design, a kind of skeleton drawing prepared by a professional architect. This would establish important details such as unit counts, building configurations, and required operational spaces and amenities, and would then form the basis for a more precise cost breakdown. However, even before this, the foundation's recommended next step was for administration to retain a professional development consultant to assist with the feasibility stage of this project. This consultant would help develop an initial pro forma that considered everything from unit mix to anticipated rents, construction costs to procurement options. Based on inquiries made by administration with industry, these services would take roughly 6 months to complete and would cost between $60,000 to $75,000. In administration's opinion, and based on the advice of the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, this expert guidance would be instrumental in making the city's first foray into affordable housing development competitive for funding from other levels of government, and would be the first step to achieving the shovel-ready status needed to be successful for grant applications. Based on the advice we received, administration does not recommend that the city proceed with developing a Gates Landing style project due to the considerable financial risk that comes with a project of this scale. An alternative recommended option for council to advance an affordable housing project in Beaumont is to pursue acquiring several parcels of land that can be used for a Habitat for Humanity project. The financial risk to the city is much smaller and would not require additional staff resources to execute. Finally, should council want to continue pursuing a Gates Landing style project, council may make a motion for administration to procure development consulting services to conduct a feasibility study, and this would also require an additional staff resource to manage this project. That concludes my presentation, and administration welcomes questions from council.
Thank you, Ms. Sanowski. Appreciate the presentation. And with that, I'll open up the questions from members of council. Councillor Barnhart, you are first with questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Administration, I really do appreciate all the work that went into this. And I agree definitely with your recommendation at this point that we're not at all ready to invest the time and money to do a whole project on our own. One of the things I wanted to ask you is whether or not there is anything we need to do to pursue the future projects that I know Leduc Regional Housing has shared with you around the current land that is used for Leduc Regional Housing in Beaumont, and looking at, putting affordable housing mixed in with the seniors housing. Is that anything that you looked at while you were doing this report, or is that something that requires a further motion, or where do we go with that? Because I do think that's a partnership that can help with many of the things that we're talking about here. Not taking away from your other idea, I think Habitat's a great way to go as well. But I wonder if you know anything about what I'm talking about, or is that something I need to have another report on?
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart, for that question. I think we've been discussing with the Deal Housing Foundation. We understand that they have some plans to sort of redevelop their existing site, and we are working with them, and we are waiting for more information and concept, because it is not just coming and develop. There is a planning process for that, and also because it is increasing in density, because one of the idea is to demolish one building and then putting up another higher, more dense, more units, right, into the area. So there may be a little bit of the servicing issues that we have to overcome, and also looking at the site planning aspect of it. So we are working with them. They are aware of. We are willing to work with them on the project, whenever they are ready.
Mayor, if I could just share with council that it is the next priority for the Leduc Regional Housing to bring affordable housing into Beaumont after the Plainview project is completed. So it's on their capital list. So I just wanted to make sure that the administration was, and I knew you were, but I just wanted to make it public that that's in the works as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. See no further questions from clarification. Members of council, would you please put the motion on the screen to adopt this report as information? Thank you. I'll move that the December 10th, 2024 report, Affordable Housing Development, Potential Next Steps, be received for information. Thank you. Members of council, any questions on the motion? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process, Ms. Narayanan? And that carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you for presentation. We appreciate that. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is item 6.3, which is now 6.2 for this evening, 2025 municipal operating, utility operating, and capital budget adoption. Jay, Ms. Maharchik, I believe you'll be presenting. Let me get your microphone going. There it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're here this evening to seek council's approval of the 2025 municipal and utilities operating and capital budgets. Just as a reminder, so the province requires that municipal governments approve or adopt an annual operating and capital budget each year by December 31st. Administration came on November 12th with a package that laid out the operating and capital budgets for council's consideration. There was a subsequent question period and responses replied or returned to council. The tax rate started out at 7.7%, and through council's deliberations and adjustments, we got it down to 5.01% on the operating side. You will notice this year that there is no approved document right now. This is a process change that I'm looking to permanently adopt. It allows an appropriate amount of time to do the I dotting and T crossing to have a perfectly finished budget document. You will recall during the recommended budget that there were some slight adjustments that needed to be fixed, so I prefer to have the time to do things correctly. So what we've done instead this year is supplied the attachments that speak to the changes that council made. They've all been audited and represent all of the changes, so we can track how we got from the 7.7 to the 5.01, as well as the changes to the capital. Just as a reminder for the residents, so that 5.01% tax increase for a sample property of $471,000 equates to $162 annually, and that also includes 1.88% for the RCMP contract. And with that, I will let council discuss.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion on the screen? I'll make the motions for the budgets, and we'll have council ask questions, make deliberations on it if we need to, and then we'll go to the vote on the motion. So on the three budgets. Thank you. So I'll move that the 2025 municipal operating, utility operating, and capital budget, including a general municipal tax levy of $31,242,500, 5.01% increase, revenue requirements for acquisitions at $9,567,100, and non-tax revenue at $19,729,000, with total revenues and matching expenses at $69,404,400 to be adopted. And that the 2025 municipal capital budget with revenues matching expenses at $9,081,569 be adopted, and that the 2025 utility operating budget with revenues matching expenses at $12,851,800 be adopted, and that the 2025 utility capital budget with revenues matching expenses at $10,976,500 be adopted. With that, I'll open up the floor to members of council with questions or comments on the budget before we go to a vote procedure. Any members of council have any comments or questions at this point? This is the result of our workshop, of course, as mentioned by Jay earlier. So, Councillor Natalibus, Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect. I guess a question and a comment. First question to Jay, just looking for that clarification for anyone that missed last meeting in terms of typical household versus average household versus, what was the other term? Sample. So I guess clarification on the sample for everyone watching, please.
Thank you through the mayor to the councillor. There was some nuances around the language with the use of the word average and typical. So as you know, average does have three different definitions of mean, mode, and median. So that's not a standard piece. And just to not suggest that there is a typical bill or residence within the city, we set a sample. So it's just a random number at this point that we assign a tax rate percentage for.
Perfect, thank you. And then I guess just a comment here. I almost wish that we could vote on this individually. I'll tell you where one of my concerns lie. My concern lie on the capital side of things, where I don't feel that some of the questions that I had asked were answered clearly enough to have a clear understanding of where a lot of this funding is going. I know council isn't directly involved, obviously, on the operational side, and not necessarily fully on the capital in the background once all of this is approved. So ultimately, this budget workshop gives us the opportunity to ask the questions and get clarity and transparency on how all of these funds are going to be invested. When I had asked the question in regards to fleet and equipment growth, I don't feel that my answer, the answer that was provided me with enough information for us to make the decision, for example, on the motion I had put forward, because we truly don't know what we're replacing or what we're investing in. So my concern is, if we don't have that information, how can we proceed with the decisions that we had made? So again, I know we put a lot of work into decreasing the tax levy, but on the capital side, I just don't know that I was provided enough information, and that's somewhat concerning on my side. But I do appreciate that due process was followed and everyone was involved in the decisions made here. But I do just want to make that clear that I do have a bit of concern there.
Thank you, Councillor. Fair point. I do know with Ms. Proharchik, are new to our finance department. He has some observations and ideas for next year's budget process. We'll do a debrief with him sometime in January, February. Perhaps your question could be part of the debrief in terms of how to get more information to you in a similar type of question for next year's budget process. So point taken, but I think we have a way to maybe help you address that concern for next year's budget process and give you more of a comfort zone with that budget process at that time. Any further questions or comments, members of council, on the motion? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'll get up on a soapbox here for a minute. I don't do that very often, but I think I'll do it this budget. I think as we wrap up this year's budget deliberations, I just wanted to reflect on some of the complexities, I guess, of the decisions we made and the broader context that kind of shaped my votes as we went through this. No doubt, tough decisions were made. I voted in favor of the 2% COLA for city employees because I believe that it's a necessary step towards fairness and recognition, and it also ensured an equitable base that acknowledges the real and growing pressures of inflation and pressures that impact not just residents, but also the people who work really hard every day to keep our city running. And many of our employees are also residents of Beaumont. Many of our employees also saved our ratepayers $6 million through innovative and diligent efforts, and I believe this warrants recognition. At the same time, I voted against some merit increases, not because I don't believe that our employees deserve them, but because I had to weigh the wants of the public as we're all feeling the pinch of rising costs against what is best. A pinch of rising costs against what's best for the city. So this decision was about balance, and supporting COLA was about fairness, and holding back on the merit increases was about addressing the financial concerns of our residents while managing the realities of our budget constraints. Although these decisions did not come lightly, and the challenges we face as a municipality are not unique to Beaumont. Municipalities across Alberta are grappling with systemic financial pressures caused by decades of underfunding and an outdated taxation model. Some of the factors we're navigating, including pandemic-era tax freezes and artificially low increases, while they were very much needed at that time, they still left fiscal gaps that we're working to close. Inflationary pressures that have driven up the cost of everything, and it erodes our purchasing power. Provincial downloading that shifts more costs onto municipalities without adequate support and funding, and population growth, which is a sign of a thriving community, but also increases the strain on our infrastructure and services. And urban sprawl, which has spread resources thin. I just want to highlight some stats that we heard during budget. For every dollar we collect in taxes, it costs us $1.40 to service these areas. Balancing growth and operational demands has been hard, and our CAO said this was by far one of the toughest budgets. According to Alberta municipalities, current provincial infrastructure funding in the province is about $1 billion short of what municipalities need each year, which is significant. And I think this context matters because it shapes the decisions we make and the challenges we face, not just today, but for years to come, as we look at other budgets. And as we look to vote on this budget, I would encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this budget, because what may seem like a win to vote against it, it only compounds issues over time, resulting in the erosion of services and infrastructures that we rely on. We worked hard to get really creative and add some great positions and capital items to this budget that our community will see direct benefit from. So while I'm optimistic that solutions can be found, I also feel a responsibility that we have to be transparent, as our administration has been, about the realities that we're facing. Lowering the levy this year did not alleviate the systemic pressures that we're under. and addressing these issues will require collaboration and innovation beyond just our municipal level. So we have to focus on how we can collaborate together, and that effort includes city staff, residents, council, all working together with other levels of government to keep building on the positive things we have. So I encourage us all to just reflect on how we can support one another, collaborate towards solutions, and continue to build the Beaumont that we all really love and enjoy. So, thanks, Mayor. I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Councillor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I believe each budget, I've kind of had some concluding remarks as well, so I've brought them tonight, and they're going to focus more on the budget process. So the 2025 budget process afforded council many ways to bring forward residents' concerns and ideas, and councillors had ample opportunity to gain clarity through asking questions and seeking further clarity. There was an inherent ability for councillors to make motions and bring forward any and all concerns. I think we saw many examples of that at budget. Throughout the process, it didn't seem to me that any councillor left anything on the table. I saw creative ideas, I heard tough questions, and I saw a very engaged council. Again, I really want to underscore that there was ample opportunity to bring forward concerns and ideas throughout this entire process. We were a full day and 2 evenings, so there were many hours available. In my view, there's an inherent support for the budget and the work that was put into it from each of us as we left the workshop. For me, if there were any lingering issues or questions, that falls on the individual, not the process. I would encourage council to support the budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. It's also, something I think we do take advantage of is to make a statement at the end of the budget, because it is one of the most important things we do every year. It's not just only at budget time, because we make decisions all throughout the year that affect our bottom line, but I also want to take a moment to say that I thought civic participation this year was at I don't know if it's an all-time high, but certainly felt that there were very, very interested citizens. There seemed to be a lot of people who were paying attention. Now, I don't know if that's real or perceived, but it certainly felt like there was a lot of questions being asked, and I felt councillors had to rise to the occasion to really be on their game and be able to answer those questions and take forward what they thought was important to take forward. So I wanted to make sure that I underlined how important I think that civic participation is for our community in general. And one of the things I particularly felt was important was how our committees participated. And this year, I think for maybe not the first time, but certainly one of the most valuable times, I think our Recreation and Culture Committee was asked for their advice on some of the purchases and some of the proposals put forward. And I know specifically the Arts Advisory Committee was engaged and even went so far as to have an open house to bring people in to see how things could be used. So things like that really do make me feel that the civic participation really leads to a better process in the end. As my colleagues have mentioned, balance is really important, and this was a tough year. Amongst us, we don't all agree, and I don't think we should all agree. I think that would be a bad sign if all of us agreed on everything. So we represent different ideals, different walks of life, different ages, different genders, everything. The diversity here could be even more, but what we have, we certainly managed to bring those ideas forward and debate them, and I felt that was very, very important and well done. More time would definitely be something that we all could benefit from. We were rushed this year, as my colleague, Councillor Van Newkirk has mentioned. He didn't say the word rushed, I did. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but we did feel like we had to move quickly. And some of that is where I think we lost the opportunity to get more information from the administration and ask more questions. In the past, we've done it different ways, but I haven't found one that's been perfect yet. This was particularly difficult in many, many ways. And while we don't want to see increases in our taxes, none of us do, we also don't want to see decreases in our services. So it was very tough, but I do feel that we've reached a point where I can definitely get behind and support this particular budget, Mayor. So thank you very much for the opportunity to say so.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments, members of council? I have a couple of comments myself before we wrap on to the vote. Seeing none, I agree with all the comments by previous councillors. Budgets are the most important thing we do is the budget. Everything flows from the budget. I want to thank administration for your efforts in putting the budget together. Council was heavily engaged in the question and answer process. We were heavily engaged in the open houses. We also did a very good job of responding to emails from members of the public who had questions. We were all involved in that process as well. So at the end of the day, this budget was about balance. 7.7 was not a small number. We're at 5.01, which I think is a very balanced, prudent approach to the budget. It's not as low as it could be, yes, but we're not reducing our services. The snow removal will be the same for 2025. Grass cutting will be the same. We've not reduced services at all to our residents. That's important. We have given our employees a 2% COLA, not full merit as mentioned, but they do get a COLA to keep them abreast with inflation. So we took a very balanced approach. I'm very proud of the work we've done in this budget. This is my 8th budget. As some members of council, this is their 8th budget, and everyone gets interest more difficult sometimes, or more difficult to get our head around how in detail the budget process really is. So I'm very proud of the broad job we've done this year on this budget. And with that, seeing no further questions, members of council, again, thank everybody involved and our residents too who came to the open houses and gave us communication by email and phone calls with their input. Best part of our job is interacting with our residents. That is the best part. And sometimes it's not exactly the easiest part of the job, but that's why we're here. And those interactions gave us the information we need to make good, sound decisions on the budget. I think we've done that. So again, council, thank you. Administration, thank you. And our residents, thank you for your efforts on making Beaumont a better place with our budget for 2025. Seeing no further discussion on the motion, council, would you please initiate the voting process on the 2025 budgets? Councilor Talabas? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you, council. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the budgets. All 3 operating budgets and capital and utility. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is item 6.2, update to C14 purchasing policy. Ms. Boharczyk and Ms. Tinglin, your first. Please begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacey Ann Tinglin. I'm the procurement specialist at the city. Mayor Danalu and councillors, thank you for having us here today. So I have Jay with me. He's the Director of Finance. So for today, we are here requesting approval on the updating C14 purchasing policy. Now, the procurement policy sets guidelines for procurement practice at the city, ensuring legislature compliance, controlling cost, and reducing risk. The updates were contained in the council report that was submitted. I will be highlighting some of these updates and providing some feedback on those. Okay? So one of the updates that was made was to define Alberta Purchasing Connection. Now, this is the Government of Alberta platform where vendors can see the open competitive bids once they're posted. It's vendors can sign up on this platform, and it's free of cost. There is no cost to do so. And once they sign up and register on the platform, they're able to download all bids that are posted there. So we're required to post at least notices on the Alberta Purchasing Connection. At this time, the city posts notices along with bid documents on this platform. Another update that was made was to define buying groups. So buying groups are defined as cooperative arrangements or formal corporate arrangements. They administer joint procurement for group members. And the idea is to achieve economies of scale and increase the group's purchasing power with suppliers. So this ties in to the policy for the city to achieve best value in our procurement practices and reduce cost as much as possible. Another update that was made was to define the thresholds on the New West Partnership Trade Agreement for procurement of goods and services. So we're looking at $75,000 for goods and services, and for construction, we're looking at $200,000. So what it does is specify that once we have procurement values at those limits, we are required to have an open competitive bid process. There are exceptions, of course, because the trade agreement does allow for that, But whenever there are exceptions, then those will be assessed. But for the most part, we're required to go out to open competitive bid at these thresholds. Another section that was added to the policy was a section around budget and approval. And what this states is that for every procurement being done, there must be a budget approval for it. There must be budget and there must be approval for it to take place. And then there is addition of a compliance monitoring and reporting section. This speaks to audits and also compliance, auditing compliance on procurement. Okay, so those are the highlights that I've taken out from the adjustments that were made, and I'm opening the floor now for questions.
Thanks for the presentation, appreciate that. And with that, open questions to members of council. Councilman Telebus, Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. First off, welcome to the team. I think it's such a critical role that is sometimes underestimated, but my opinion on it is if there's not someone shaking the tree, you're not getting every last leaf off of it. So never here necessarily to question where, money goes or why aren't we getting the best price, but if you don't have someone continuously looking at that, it's hard to know that you're getting the best deal all the time. Just looking for a little clarification in terms of the compliance monitoring and reporting. Obviously, it's an aspect that we're adding in. I'm wondering what that looks like, what kind of team will be doing the auditing, what's the plan behind that?
Do you want to address? Okay, so I think what I would say is that we are still very much in discovery phase. Both Jay and myself are new to the team. So right now we are looking at this compliance it's being done internally, more or less by the finance team, but we are also looking at what that process will look like. We haven't totally defined it as yet, but we have outlined what the potential structure is, but as to exactly what the process is, we're still working on that.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison wants to lay on that conversation. Ms. Morrison?
Yes, to the Mayor, to Councillor Natellenbos. Just as clarity, of course, we've updated the policy to have a much more concise definition in the policy itself. The compliance and audit work has been happening, either through finance or through the operational areas. So it's not like it's something brand new. It's just making sure that it's covered in the policy.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
Perfect. Thank you. I guess, Ms. Morrison, then can you provide a little clarity as to what the change is?
I believe Ms. Tingling has actually outlined where we're doing some more review of how purchasing is done and how our procurement team, now that we have a team, can work with the operational areas to just improve processes. And again, compliance was happening. I just want to make sure that that's really, really clear. Coming into the organization, the purchasing was done well. I just think now we have more resources to be able to just up that game a little bit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My next question, I guess, relates more so to the open solicitation and specifically the numbers that are provided. Are you able to detail the difference between the updates that have been made now versus what we previously had in terms of thresholds for numbers and the requirement for the open solicitation?
So if I remember correctly, the C14 policy that is currently posted online did not specify the values. So what the update does is provide the values as defined in the new West Partnership Trade Agreement. So those values have not changed over time. They've always been at the 75,000 and at 200,000 for construction. What it is that for process, organizations may determine whether they are doing their competitive bids at that threshold or lower, but that $75,000 for goods and services have been what the threshold has been for New Hospital.
Perfect. And you had mentioned there are some exceptions. Are you able to define what those exceptions are?
They vary based on the trade agreement. So one of them is if the justification is that if you can prove that there's only one vendor able to provide the goods or services. So there's one exception, but each trade agreement has exceptions within them. Some are the same, but some will have more than others.
Perfect, thank you. I think this is one of the key components, having an established criteria as to when we go to that open solicitation creates healthy competition. So I really appreciate this update, and I look forward to, I guess, the fiscal results that this will bring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Markov-Swain, Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, the update. I pick up on where Nathan was going around the compliance monitoring and reporting. Really appreciate the focus. I did have a few folks reach out when they read that, the initial part of the report. It almost implied that we weren't doing it and this was new, and I know you've caught that now. So thank you for clarifying that, because I know we were doing it. Not that I could find the old one, but anyway, here's where we are today. The question I did have was just about the annual summary report. So it talks about, we're going to do that report of our procurement activities, ensure transparency, accountability. Where do you envision that report goes? And appreciate it's probably still a work in progress, but is this is something for the public? Is this posted on a website? How do you think about that?
So I think when we had, when Jay and I had discussed this, we were looking at it for, as part of the annual reports that are submitted, that this would form part of those reports.
Okay, so maybe a bit more specific. Okay. Where would the general public have access to that?
So through the mayor to the councillor, so as part of our annual financial statements, annual report that we would present to council either as committee of the whole or council meeting, depending, I'm not sure what our formal approval are of those documents, but that would be a section of that full report that would come annually to council, speaking to all of the procurement pieces that we've done. It'd be a complementary piece to the financial statements.
Great, thanks. And those are thrilling meetings. Looking forward to that there, adding a bit of spice into those. So yeah, thank you for that. I think it's, and we may, again, this could be something that we were doing before, but I like it called out here because as has been pointed out, a few folks have questions around where that comes from, and this is a really good, transparent way to put that out there. So really appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, you have the floor. Kat?
Thank you. Appreciate this coming forward, and welcome as well. Can you provide examples of a circumstance in which a vendor might be suspended under the vendor suspension section?
So the section as we have outlined it here, it speaks to vendors being excluded from submitting a bid, a proposal, or quote under various circumstances, right? So it mentions litigation, but it doesn't, it's not that as if they're involved in litigation, they're automatically suspended. So it's doing an evaluation of the vendor to see what is going on with them, whether or not they meet any of these circumstances outlined here, and then determine, okay, what is the extent and how does it affect the business that if we would do any new business with them. So it's doing an assessment every time that happens to determine whether or not they do need to be suspended and for how long the period for the suspension.
Okay,
does that answer your question?
Yep, okay. Thank you. And then how will the new definition, like such as the buying groups piece, kind of affect our current procurement processes or current relationships with vendors? Will it impact that at all, or is that it's just more of a formality?
I think it's more for transparency, because what it does is outline that telling vendors that, we do have the option to either participate in a buying group, or we can do joint procurement as well to form a buying group when we're going out to the marketplace. So the way defining it in the policy, what it does is just providing transparency.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
At that point, Ms. Morrison wants to jump on with an additional comment at this point.
Yes, actually, it was answered quite well. With the buying groups, just to be clear that they can perform actually the full procurement function on our behalf, or on any participants' behalf. So that would mean sometimes the impact on the vendors is if we choose to go with the buying group, the selection would be from those vendors who have gone through the competitive process. So that we wouldn't necessarily have to. We would be able to select from that group of vendors. So of course, some of the advantages of buying group, besides group buying power, is a huge saving on administrative time and still being able to get an extremely competitive pricing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go back to the suspension of vendors section there. Just had a couple questions on that. So in the policy, it does outline the fact that if the process is being considered, that the vendor will know. Can you just maybe affirm that? So if a vendor was being considered to be suspended, or in fact was suspended, how would they know?
So the intent would be to provide them, to advise them. So we would advise them that we have received like either their proposal or that they are considered being, we're currently reviewing whatever document that they have submitted, and these are and they are considered for suspension based on these following circumstances. So providing them with a notice.
Yeah, no, fair. And then subsequent question, has this suspension of vendor process been tested through our legal counsel?
No, not yet.
Okay. Big picture, if this process existed earlier, would the city have had to have utilized it? Have we had vendor performance management issues where, you know, they may have resulted in suspension of vendors? Recognizing the both of you are new, maybe, I don't know if anyone else knows that answer.
So the last 2 weeks?
I'm not aware that there has been, but that's probably something I need to check on and get back to you on.
Yeah, I think that would be,
Sorry, Ms. Morrison, you want to jump on that point as well? Thanks.
Absolutely, yes to the mayor, to the councillor. There has been some performance issues in the past, again, in the 6 months that I have been here, just learning that, and that, you know, a structured process was followed. And I believe for the past policy, there was legal consultation, and we're not making substantial changes here, but we would confirm that as well. But yes, there has been some performance problems.
yeah, for me, you know, it really checked the box when the values were put in here, as others have said, you know, the procurement triggers, the 75 and the 200, but this was the next most important piece for myself, because I think that poor behavior shouldn't result in more work for the city. You know, that's just table stakes, so mind your P's and Q's and do good work. That's what this policy says, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrod. Phil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just join Councillor Natellenbus and others in welcoming you to the team, Ms. Tingley. Just wondering if you could comment on the process of reviewing the former procurement policy and updating this one. Specifically, did it include a survey of neighboring municipalities and comparator municipalities? And finally, what we have before us tonight for potential approval, how does this place us alongside our comparator municipalities?
So in updating the policy, what was looked at was the request that was made by council from the prior meeting. And yes, there was also review of other policies by other municipalities, but I didn't just look at municipalities. I also looked at like post-secondary institutions and just see what they have in their policies and whether or not we covered all of the major points in ours that they did in theirs. So how do we compare right now to theirs? I think based on what the assessment that I have done and also the reviews that I have done on other policies, I would say we are comparable to what the information included in the other municipalities and also in some post-secondary institutions policies.
Thank you. Appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions from the first round. Nathan, you have a follow-up question? Now is the time, and then we'll move things along. Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question in regards to the public bids running through the network that we'll be using. Is there an opportunity for those bids to be public as well? So obviously, it's available for the public to bid on, but will the public within Beaumont be able to see some of those bids and potentially why some decisions were made versus others?
Sorry, are you asking whether they'll see the results of the bids, like the vendors that were awarded the contract?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so one of the, we do have to post all our bid awards once we have awarded a contract to the vendors from the bidding process.
Okay.
So all bid awards are also posted to APC.
Okay, perfect. And visibility to the other bids that may not have been successful?
So we'll post the vendors that have submitted bids, and then the vendor that has been awarded.
Okay, perfect. And but visibility to those numbers as well? Or just the successful?
The trade agreement requires that we post the bid award amount,
Okay.
but not for the not for the other vendors so we won't post the values for the other vendors.
Okay. And where you say it's a requirement, I can appreciate that, but is the opportunity there to post the other bids, or would that create other conflict?
There are potential conflicts as relates to the confidentiality of vendor information. So there are potential conflicts to doing that. So we would have to look into what the risks are and whether or not we are willing to take that risk. Go ahead.
If I can just add that to Councillor Telebas. So price is not the defining factor in the weighting. So we do have a schedule that comes up for our weighting criteria for each one of the procurements. Cost is one of them. And to just put the dollar value of unsuccessful bids on compared to, say, if we chose to pay a little bit more, but we got 6 times the service, would create an unfair representation with, well, why didn't you take the cheapest one? Because that's, you kind of get what you pay for sometimes. So it's about the value to the organization as well. So that would not be, I'd prefer not to just have it on a single axis of comparison. And then we'd have to take a look at, again, the confidentiality elements of the procurement process.
Perfect, thank you. So for clarity, it would just be the amount of the successful proponent, but it would not include the actual bid package. It would just include the amount.
It would just be the successful vendors' information.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, members of council, thank you for the presentation. Would you please, Madam Clerk, put the motion on the screen? And I'll make that motion to move things. Purchasing policy is set out in attachment 1 of December 10, 2024 report be approved. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing no discussion or questions on the motion, please initiate the voting process. Council, would you please vote on the motion? Thank you, council. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor. Thank you, council. Thank you, administration, for your presentation on. Thank you. Our next item on our agenda, we drop down to item 7.2, bylaw 1063-24, municipal election bylaw, first, second, and third reading. So, Madam Clerk, administration will present the bylaw. We'll do first reading, go right to second reading, at which time we'll entertain questions and motions from council at second reading. And then we'll go to third reading. We have consent to go to third reading. So who is presenting, Madam Clerk, on, is it yourself?
It's
I believe
myself,
on
Mayor. Yeah, thank
on
you.
7.2. Is your microphone on? I can't see you.
It sure is, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Shalene Winter, Manager of Legislative Services, and with me tonight is Joanne Dargy, Director of Legal and Legislative Services. We are here tonight to present Bylaw 1063-24, Municipal Election Bylaw, for first, second, and third reading. At the November 19th Committee of the Whole, I presented Council with an overview of the changes to the Local Authorities Election Act. In my presentation, I had indicated that Elections Bylaw would be coming forward with changes that would align with the new legislation and also give an opportunity for Council to consider further amendments. Municipal elections in Alberta are governed through the provincial legislation, but some matters must be addressed by local jurisdictions, by bylaw. In 2024, the province introduced changes to the Local Authorities Election Act through the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendments Act. Aside from the needed to update the election bylaw because of the legislation changes, it is best practice for municipalities to review the bylaw a year prior to a general election. The following are proposed changes to the bylaw. We made some housekeeping changes to the definitions of this bylaw. Some definitions were removed, keeping within the legislation, and changes to some terms we added further clarity on where required. The next provision is voting station hours. This section allows for the returning officer to change the legislated start time from 10 a.m. to an earlier time. This would extend the voting hours for electors, adding additional time for electors to vote. Giving this delegation to the returning officer to determine set times allows for flexibility without having to come to council to make changes by resolution. As mentioned in the report, in the 2021 election, we opened polling stations at 6 a.m. to accommodate health restrictions. The next provision is the advance voting and ballots. This is a required change for the legislation. We removed the section related to tabulators since tabulators are no longer allowed. We expanded the access to special ballots to align with the legislation. Special ballots can be requested by anyone who is unable to vote on the election date or advance vote. We added the authorization for counting ballots in advance. This would be for counting the special ballots prior to 8 p.m. We feel this provision will help us with time management with the hand count, starting those opening of those ballots at 7:30 p.m. Another notable amendment is removing the provisions that duplicate already set out in the Local Authorities Election Act. The City of Beaumont must have this bylaw in place prior to December 31st, 2024. The next steps for council to consider are giving bylaw 1063-24 municipal election bylaw for all three readings as presented, or if council would like to see changes to the bylaw, such as adding the need for a criminal record check or adding the need for a nomination deposit to accompany the nomination package, then council could amend the proposed bylaw and then give the bylaw all the readings as amended. This is our presentation for this evening, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them for you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just to clarify, then we can do first reading, vote on that, and go to second reading, and then entertain questions and motions at second reading?
Correct, Mayor. I would, procedurally, I would say give it first reading and then any amendments after that.
Right. Thank you. All right, I will then move first reading when the motion comes on the screen.
You'll just have to give me a minute. I'm controlling the computer and doing the presentation here this evening.
So just so we're clear then, council can ask questions at second reading right away here and make any amending motions at second reading, correct?
If council has any questions with regards to the proposed amendments, we can answer those once you start debating at first reading, and then after give first reading, then that's when we would start to accept the motions to amend.
At second reading, okay. Thank you. Just
Mayor,
clarify the
just to
process.
be clear, we don't have to move second reading to start those amendments. We can do second reading as amended.
Okay. Okay, I'll move that election bylaw be given first reading. Is there questions at this point from council? If not, we can go to first reading and move to second reading, if first reading passes. Seeing no questions, would you please initiate the voting process for first reading of bylaw 1063-24? Council, would you please vote on first reading? That carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of first reading. Thank you. The motion for second reading on the screen.
Mayor, before we move forward with motions to amend prior going into second.
Okay, I'm fine with that. If people want to make a motion first or go to second reading, Councilor Telebas, you have the floor, Nathan.
Perfect. Thank you. I guess just to speak to this a little bit here before I bring up my amendment here. Obviously, the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act comes with some good and with some bad, in my personal opinion. Going back to the abacus to count votes seems a bit backwards. But I do think bringing forward the opportunity to add some other requirements, which, Madam Clerk, whenever you're ready, I'll bring forward my amendment. Perfect. So I'd like to make the motion to amend that bylaw 1063-24 municipal election bylaw be amended by adding criminal record check section and include the following. Candidate nomination package for the offices of mayor and councillor shall include a basic criminal record check or basic police information check issued by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police within 1 month of filling of the nomination package with the returning officer. And B, it is the candidate's responsibility to apply for the basic criminal record check prior to submitting their nomination package to the returning officer, and nomination packages will not be accepted without a valid criminal record check.
Thank you, Councillor. Please speak to your motion.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I think this definitely is an opportunity for us to bring additional transparency to the candidates that are running for a position within, obviously, the municipal government. By thoroughly screening potential electoral candidates pass for any criminal record, you can avoid a lot of issues. I think a few of the big things is we can enhance security and potentially ensure a safer workplace for staff. We build credibility. It's important to know what kind of criminal record, if any, a candidate who's going to be representing the public has. It'll build credibility, and I believe it'll also minimize legal risk and potential damages. So I can't really see any negative to us adding this in. It just provides us with another level of comfort that the folks that we're electing to be a public servant are qualified to do so and don't necessarily have a list of serious offenses that they've committed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, can we put this motion back on the screen, please?
I will. Mayor, sorry, I just want to confirm also there is another additional clause in there that was kind of down at the bottom, so I just want to move that over here. Sorry, my screen isn't big enough.
Sure.
It's number C.
Nathan, just want to maybe speak that out loud so people know C is also part of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just continuing on with my motion to amend, last section there, it is also the candidate's responsibility to pay any applicable fees required when obtaining a criminal record check.
Thank you. You have spoken your motion. At this point, question from members of council. Councilor Moncalfe-Swain, Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe just help me follow along here. So obtaining a criminal record check, what it doesn't say in here, maybe it does throughout the bylaw, and I can't see the relation. Like, what does that mean? So if it comes back that there has been some sort of offence, are you saying that precludes them, or that's just information for the public should have? Can you just speak to that?
Yes,
Madam Clerk?
through you to Councillor Moncalfe-Swain. If someone has an indictable offence on their criminal record check that comes back, it does not stop a candidate from running. The only indictable offence that they've been charged under in the last 10 years would be under the Local Authorities Election Act, the Canada Elections Act, the Election Finances and Contribution Act, would be disqualifying the candidate only, not any other convictions.
Right, and I read that. So I was more curious. The intention here is to make that public. So if they failed a few of these things and it doesn't meet that criteria, they would still be able to be a candidate. But the intention here is so that the public sees that. Is that right?
So to be clear with regards to what the public sees, I can speak to that a little bit before Councillor Natellenbos. So there's not much that the city would be able to do to redact any information in a criminal record check. The record would be subject to FOIP, and anyone could make a request and the information would be provided. The details that we would redact are things like address, phone number, but in general, the substance of the document would be released to the public.
Through FOIP, right? Like, we have, yeah, okay.
That's your question, Sam? You want to think about it and come back to it? Yeah, just process it. I know what you mean. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Ms. Winter, just to be really clear, following up on Councillor Moncalfe-Swain's point, a criminal record check comes back and someone has an offense which is not related to the Elections Act, that does not eliminate the possibility of them being elected. There's nothing in the act that says they can't be elected. But it serves a different purpose because that person might not want to know that, might not want the public to know that they have had that on their record. So that's the sticking point for me. We're not saying they cannot be on council. There's no way that we can say that because of the way the act is written. Is that how you're saying it?
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, that is correct.
So if anything, the person who is kept from, who may choose not to put their name forward for election will do that because they don't want anyone to know of some of their past history, which may or may not be a good thing. It just depends on, how do I put that? Criminal activity is never a good thing, but there are some circumstances where it's not something that should preclude them from participating in civic engagement.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, as I had mentioned at the committee of the whole, is that any type of conviction that is within there would not preclude any person from running unless it was under those specific acts that I mentioned here in the report and tonight. There was very little consultation with municipalities on this section of the act and being added in. There's no benefit to the municipality to, in fact, it's probably would be more, would cost the municipality to have this as part of it, just for the administrative side of it. And should someone FOIP the record, and going through that process is quite lengthy and quite expensive. But there's no benefit to the municipality. It would be up to the elector to make that decision on what the benefit is to themselves, to know that information.
Could I ask one further, Mayor?
Yes.
You alluded to the cost, and I wasn't sure if you had that information, but can you speak a little bit more to what the process, how that process would add up in terms of what the cost might be, and any other reasons why this would, I'm trying to do the pros and cons on this. I can see some of the pros, as Councillor Natellenbus has mentioned, but I can't see what we're trying to fix, because this hasn't been a problem in my 12 years. So, but then again, how do I know that?
Right.
But seriously, I really don't think too many criminals would get elected based on some of the history of the people that we're trying to keep from being on here in some way by doing this. So I'm really at a loss. I would like to know if you could give me some reasons why, for or against, this would be a good policy.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, I'm not sure I can answer those questions for you as far as a yes or a no definitive answer to give what you're looking for this evening. What I can say is that the cost to the municipality, if the record was to be FOIP'd, would be the administration cost to prepare those documents and just go through the FOIP process. Depending on how much information we need to redact, which would be very little, we collect $25 from the elector to process that information, and then it would go through reading the document and redacting and then releasing and emailing. So I would say probably on average it could be an hour, hour and a half of administration time processing each FOIP request on that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Okay, just so I'm very clear. So this information, if a candidate does have to put it in, it's not made available readily. So it doesn't really add any additional transparency unless someone FOIPs the information.
Correct.
So it's not like, when we have a list of candidates on our website that the list says clean criminal record check.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, no, we don't list on our website that they would have a clear or a hit on their criminal record check.
Okay, so the only way is if someone FOIP'd and then, okay. So I think for me that, I guess going back to kind of what's the problem we're trying to solve, I agree and think transparency is important as well. I just, if it's not technically readily available and people have to FOIP, there's there's a lot of roadblocks in the way. So I don't know, maybe later this might be made easier. I'm just not sure where I stand on this one. And I think there are enough barriers for a lot of different people. And I think if somebody did something, 15 years ago, that should maybe not preclude them from being able to come forward. Anyway, we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate those comments and all comments made by everybody so far. Having said that, there's no further comments, members of council. So at this point, Councillor Telemus, you have the floor to a final comment on your motion, and we'll go to the vote. You have the floor, Nathan.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. As discussed, yeah, it's not like it's going to be visible for absolutely everyone, but it adds another level of protection, especially if there is some knowledge of an individual who has committed an indictable offense. Another thing I want to focus on here is it's indictable offenses. These are serious offenses. These aren't summary convictions. So it's important for people representing the public, people engaging with the public, people dealing with financial decisions, that they disclose their history and any convictions that they have. And again, it's not going to necessarily be public knowledge until it's requested, but why not add an additional layer of protection should it be required?
Mayor, if I may, I want to apologize.
Madam Clerk?
I misspoke. The criminal record check is subject to FOIP in redaction. However, the returning officer does have to make the criminal record available to the public if asked, and not through a FOIP request. My apologies.
Okay, we'll take a second and just digest that last comment from Madam Clerk, make sure everyone's comfortable. That a bit of a clarification there, so.
My apologies for that.
No problem. Okay, then I guess I will go to Councillor Penrod for a comment, because we're going to go to the vote, but I'll go to Councillor Penrod for a quick comment, and then our question, and then we'll go forward.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I think we've already clarified tonight that this amendment won't preclude anyone that has a criminal record, but it will potentially bring that out into the light for the public to consider as they make their decisions as to who to vote for in the fall election. I had a subsequent point, and now it's going to elude me.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm being very generous.
Apologies. Yep.
I forgot about me for a comment. Then I'll give you,
Thank you.
If it comes back to you, it'll be a very quick one. My own comments, I appreciate Councilor Hill bringing it forward. I'm frustrated by the legislation not having any kind of consequences, basically based on what Madam Clerk said, how the legislation reads, but I do believe that an extra level of protection and just the extra level of accountability has some merit, so I will be supporting the motion. Councillor Penrod, if you get remembered quickly, we'll move on and we'll go to the vote. Phil?
Thanks, Mayor. It was your mention of other orders of government that jogs my memory. Maybe this is an opportunity for municipalities to lead. This does not apply to other orders of government in Canada. It's not required for either federal candidates or provincial candidates for government. And so when we do this, if we do this, we'll be one of the only places in Canada and only orders of government in Canada that has such a rule.
Thank you, Councillor. Nathan, last comment? After everybody's had a chance to speak, I'll go to the vote after you have last comment. You already did that basically, but.
Yes, I guess just in regards to the comment made by Ms. Winter, just clarity for everyone. So in terms of the cost to administration, based on what you have shared, that would be reduced. Am I correct in saying that?
Just the information of making the information available to the public, which is no different than where when someone comes in to inspect a nomination package. So it would not be.
Perfect. And then I guess just for a little more clarity, would it become more easily accessible to the general public if requested than previously stated based on having to do the redaction?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just would it be more accessible based on the change that you had mentioned from the initial statement, or would it?
Yes, it would be more accessible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes our discussion and on this motion. So at this point, please initiate the voting process on this amended motion for the bylaw. motion is defeated 4-3. Councilors, oh, hang on a second. 1 second here. Hang on. Other way around, it's approved 4-3. Councilors Natalabas, Penrod, myself, and Van Newkirk in favor. Councilors Barnhart, Monkoff Swain, and McCook in opposition. Had it right in my head, I just said it wrong, but I had it right in my head, so I would have got it right. Having said that, the motion is carried 4-3. Thank you. Councilor Natalabas? Okay, I thought it was 2, sorry. Oh, Councilor Swain, at this point you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick acknowledgement. I do need to leave, so I apologize for that, to get to my son's Christmas concert, so I won't be here for the rest of the meeting. So I just want to let that know. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Having said that, any further discussion? I'll then make the motion for second reading. Madam Clerk, can we have second reading based on the amended motion, or do you need some time to wordsmith that?
No, Mayor, I just need like 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, see you later. Pardon me. Perfect. At this point, then, I'll move that bylaw 1063-24 be given second reading as amended. Discussion on the motion, members of council. Seeing no requests to speak on second reading? Going twice? Seeing none, thank you. Council, would you please initiate the voting process on second reading? And that motion carries unanimously, 6-0 in favor of the motion. Motion is passed. Our second reading is passed. We need consensus, Madam Clerk, to go to third reading this evening, I believe. So I will move that bylaw 1063-24 be considered for third reading. Discussion on the motion. Okay. Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting
Mayor.
process? Oh, sorry, my screen didn't flash. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. Just ask the clerk to clarify the rationale for us having 3 readings on the agenda tonight on this particular subject. I think we covered it at Committee of the Whole, but just to reiterate it for the public, thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Penrod, yes, this bylaw does need to be passed prior to December 31st of this year in order to inform the candidates of the newly needed criminal record check and for nomination open, which is January 1st of 2025.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, will you please initiate the vote for consideration of third reading? That's okay. It's okay. That carries unanimously, 6-0 in favor of consideration of third reading. Would you please put the motion for third reading on the screen? I will move that bylaw 1063-24 be given third reading as amended. Council, discussion on the motion on third reading. Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process for third reading? That carries unanimously, 6-0 in favor of the motion. Third reading is passed as amended. At this point, we only have and then we have a closed session, which won't be very long this evening. So I'm going to say we're going to plow right through and get done by hopefully in the next 15, 20 minutes, and we'll be done early this evening instead of having a short break. So with that, move on to councillor inquiries. Are any councillor inquiries this evening be put forward? Seeing none, thank you. Our next item is item 9, C update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor when I get your microphone going here.
Yes, thank you very much. And to council, the members of public, and I know Shima will get it up here sooner or later, but I'll keep going anyway. Today, December 10th, is the anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a very powerful reminder that every individual, regardless of their background, is entitled to dignity, fairness, and freedom. That's something we take very seriously here in our organization, and I think our community embraces that as well. Holiday season coming up. City Hall will be closed from the December 25th to the 27th, and then again on January 1st. Economic development, as the holidays approach, we're urging people to shop local. It's been a tough year with the mail strike, so if you can, there are tons of services offered in this community. So if you're looking for that perfect gift, we're encouraging you to shop in our local businesses. The land sale that council approved on 30th Avenue has been completed. The titles are transferred and permits are underway for the development. Community services. Brighten at Beaumont is Saturday, December 14th. So this Saturday from 5 till 9, Four Seasons Park. It's a huge event. Kids love it. Kids of all ages love it. It looks like the weather's going to be great. So come on out and be part of the community. Protective services, during the holiday season, they do a great job of both the candy cane check stops, and on the next item, I'm going to talk about the Christmas elves. So they'll be out reminding people to drive safely. And as far as the Christmas elves, I know I saw the firefighters out at Sobeys last weekend with the boot gathering donations that are desperately needed. So they're used to we assist organizations by completing the intakes. Either this is what the city does by excuse me, completing the intakes either in person or over the phone, which allows us to assess the needs. In 2023, there were 108 intakes, and so far this year there are 92, and it doesn't close until Thursday. So hampers will be delivered by our Beaumont firefighters on December 16th. Past weekend, there were 6 attendees at the National Lifeguard course. We hope to see them apply and join our aquatics team. So we've been hosting those courses for quite some time. Corporate analytics and technology. Yesterday was the launch of the winter registration, and I didn't hear from anybody, so that's always a good sign. But I reached out just to say, so what did we do differently? And it's based on a number of things, including the feedback from previous registrations, including the one in the fall. But what they essentially did is set up a virtual waiting room. So it provides equal opportunity for residents, so they can get in there before 9 a.m. They sit in a queue, and in this case, there were 249 of them. And within the first hour, they then plucked out randomly and register. They did 289 registrations in the first hour. This is the process that was used in August. There's a little bit of fine tuning, and from what we understand, the winter registration went smoothly. I even was told there was a social media post that said the same thing on one of our favorite social media channels that have nothing nice to say about anybody. Transit, you can see the numbers there. Ridership in November, 32.75. We're going to obviously expect a downturn here in December with the semesters ending and the Christmas season coming along. And that's what I had for an update, so thank you.
Thanks, Your Schwartz. Before I go to any questions, I will reiterate kudos to administration on the registration process. I heard a few people phoned me and said it was great this year. I saw a couple of social media posts and a lot of good comments on there. I went on there myself and said, thanks for the kudos, but please send me an email with your good words and I'll pass on administration. So with those emails, should they come in, I will pass them on administration, but there were a lot of good comments about this last intake with this process of registration. So it's good stuff and great work, and happy people are always a good thing. Especially on social media, which sometimes never happens. But having said that, Councillor Penrod, you have a question? Oh, you had a question? You didn't? Okay, I covered that for you. Okay, thank you, Your Schwartz, for your update. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is any notices of motion from members of council. I'm not aware of any, but any other NOMs have come up since earlier today? Seeing none? All right. Next on our agenda is our closed session. So with that, I will entertain a motion. I move that council move into closed session at 6:24 p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, sections 21 and 24. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process? Council, please vote on the motion to move into closed session. The council that carried unanimously 6-0 in favor. We'll take a short break and we'll Thank you. Good evening. We are back live after our closed session. There's no business arriving from the closed session. No need for any motions. Next on our agenda is adjournment, but before we do, I just want to make a quick comment. 2024, I don't know where 2024 went. It went extremely fast. We're coming into the home stretch of our term. We're only 10 months away, and that 4 years has gone by very, very quick. 3.5 years gone by very quickly. So again, thank you for your work in 2024. To council, administration, and our residents, thank you for everything. Have a very safe and a great holiday season, and we'll see you in January. With that, we are adjourned at 6:30 p.m. Thank you and enjoy your night.